watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. So glad you're joining us. How are you guys doing today? Happy Easter, happy Easter. And I want to start off today with a question. You see, you may have found yourself sitting across the table from someone and they're explaining a story, or you see this thing pop up on the news or even in your social media feed. How many of you have seen something like that transpiring and you've heard the story, you've seen what's taking place, you go, man, I wish I had been there. Show of hands, how many of you guys have heard a story, a thing, whatever? Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That you see that thing and you just go, I wish I was there. This happened to me recently with a friend of mine. He started live tweeting where he was at. And I was like, oh, I don't really follow him a ton, but I saw that he was getting a lot of things. I kept getting these alerts. And so I chime in and see, and sure enough, he is there in the very moments that Tiger Woods was about to claim victory. And he is like live videoing it on Twitter, and I'm just like, oh, and it goes wild, and they're like, you can watch it on the news, whatever, but there was something about watching it through the eyes of a friend who's standing in the crowd the moment that things erupted, because no one thought. There were videos, and you can even go on YouTube and other places and watch, where Tiger even watches, where people for years said, he'll never play again. He's washed up. There's no way that this will happen. And while it was great to watch the replays of that, and even in high definition on TV and all this stuff, I can't imagine actually being there. See, it's one thing to just sit back and watch something on TV. And that's something that for years I've done because I'm an avid sports fanatic. I used to do a bunch of fantasy leagues, all the other stuff, but I'm too competitive and it overwhelmed my life, and things have got bad. And so, but I love sports. One in particular, I am a diehard New York Mets fan. See, there's a couple of you in the crowd. Where are my Mets fans at? Yeah, all right, see, there you go. Everyone else groans. That's all right. You can still get to heaven. It's okay. I love the New York Mets, having the farm team that used to be here in Hampton Roads, watching these guys play, go off to the big leagues. But I never, all through growing up, never got to go to a major league baseball game. And it was my dream to be able to do that. And then I met my wife, who not only made all of my dreams come true, and I'm not just saying that, she's not even in the room, and so I don't need to earn any points. Like, she did everything, but one day, she told me, say, hey, I'm surprised when you get in the car, we're leaving. I'm like, why? And she's like, I don't want to tell you. We're just going to get in the car. We're going to go. I need a bag packed for a couple days, and I need you to make sure that you pack your favorite shirt. And I knew exactly which one she was talking about. It is my New York Metropolitans t-shirt. And so I grab it, and I immediately think, So I get on the Twitters, and I start scrolling. I'm like, the Mets are playing just about 3 hours away from here. And I start looking at my wife, and I see she is veering towards Washington, D.C., where Nationals Park is there, and sure enough, she was surprising me with going to a Major League Baseball game. I'd never been able to experience this, and I'll tell you what, it was phenomenal. It is one thing to sit at home, eat some chips, like whatever, like, oh, I gotta go to the restroom, go back, come back and watch it. While it is close and it looks great on the screen, there is something about being there in the moment. To get out of your house in a chair and to be, you could, all the smells, not so great for you, but you're like, I want whatever that is. I know I just gained 5 pounds smelling it. But I hear the guys yelling, hot dogs, get your whatever, you do the thing. And you just hear the music thumping as they're going to the plate. And we had like nosebleed seats. But it didn't even matter. I was there in the moment watching players play. We even got there early. I got a ball. It was great. But to top it all off, there were about 6 guys who were there that were sitting right near us. Now, if you're a fan of the opposing team, it's kind of frowned upon that you're even in existence there. And so I'm cheering on the Mets, and the Nationals are there. But next to us are 5, 6 guys, and they're all retired firefighters and New York police officers. And they like take this annual trip. They were older guys, and we're high-fiving. They're great. By the end of it, I have inherited a New York accent. Like, we're just hamming it up. We're yelling, we're screaming. The Mets played great that day. They ended up losing, but they did awesome. And they were doing it. But there was something about being in the moment and not just hearing about it. It's like how many of you guys have ever had a video phone call? You've been on one of those. You FaceTime, those kind of things. Yeah, in Skype. It's one thing to be able to Skype and video chat with a family member. It's a totally other thing to sit down with them in the room while they're there and to be able to share and open up and to talk. It's one thing when you're going through a difficult time and you have to text a friend who's out of state, but they're there for you. They just can't be right in the middle of it. And it's a totally other thing to have them as a shoulder to cry on when things are difficult. You see, here today, and as we look at this, putting yourself in proximity to the moment changes everything. We can talk about things and explore things and be told about things, but it is a totally other instance to get close to what's happening. And you and I are doing that in this very moment now. We are putting ourselves closer to proximity to the story and the account of Jesus in what took place in his life that changed the dynamic of history and eternity forever. As we dive into this, we're all here because we have been waiting, longing for that moment that would change our lives. As we've looked at trying to find the answers to difficult questions, hoping that he would patch up that instance where life has not gone very well for us. Those hopes that we had, those dreams that we had. God, will you just do something with that? And God, what about this darkness? This weight that is just taking over my life. We even see that as we woke up this morning to see overseas as multiple churches and places were bombed in a strategic attack, wounding 400 and killing 138 people. The world is heavy. And we approach these questions and we're all wanting answers. And if you're wanting those answers, I get it because I want those answers too. And the missing piece to everything that we have been asking isn't just this Sunday school answer. It's the very movement, life, teaching, work, and conquering of death that happens in the name of Jesus. In everything that you and I have been missing, well, Jesus is the one that you've been waiting for. He is the one that takes your darkness and mine and lights everything up, putting it on full display. That all the hurts that we had, all the pain, all the regret, all the shame, all the anger, that person that you just can't seem to forgive, his light takes all of that and illuminates it in such a way that we feel this burden being lifted. But you see, the people that were following Jesus, they were promised all those same things too. They were walking with him, talking with him, eating with him. They were in a boat with him when storms started to go crazy and they freaked out, and Jesus woke up from his nap going, why are you all panicking? You watch me feed 5,000 people with a kid's lunch. Don't you think I can handle a storm? These guys had seen all of that. They had watched people who were dead. I'm talking no life within them, dead, raised from the dead in the name of Jesus. They watched miraculous things take place. And then, well, everything changed because they were promised a kingdom. You and I know the type, that Braveheart, Game of Thrones, castles and spears and weapons and people taking charge and armies type kingdom. They were expecting that, and well, that's not what Jesus was about. And then these religious leaders were threatened by the fact that he was undoing everything. It's why we have our globe the way we do, upside down, because everything they taught, Jesus was taking it and turning it upside down, saying it's not about your actions, it's about your heart. And when you encounter me and when you encounter my Father, things are different. And they were horribly angered by this. And so they said, we're going to put him to death. And that's exactly what they did. In the middle of the night, as his friends, even though he told them to stay up and pray, they fell asleep. And it was in that moment that they arrested Jesus. And they brought him to multiple sham trials in the middle of the night. And before too long, they ended up saying, you know what, I wash my hands of this. You guys want him? You want him to be killed? That's on you. Send this man to be crucified. See, the crucifixion wasn't just this thing that we think of like today where we look at capital punishment and lethal injection and electric chairs and these type things. Oh no. Crucifixions were far much more gruesome. And the Romans had perfected the art of and the science of making sure people were killed and stayed dead. And so they march him up after being completely beaten, almost within an inch of his life. They march him up to the top of this hill, where they then lay him down on these wooden beams that were crossed. And then, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't right through the hand, it would be through the wrist, because if they had driven nails through the hand when they put someone up with that body weight, it would have ripped and collapsed. So they needed to make sure that the nails stuck. And so they would drive the nail in, then they would bend the back of the nail as it came through for good measure. And then they would cross the feet over, just enough so the individual could push themselves up to gasp for breath, but just far enough down that they wouldn't be able to prop themselves up for good. And they drove a very long spike through both feet. And this is where they put our King. And they dropped the cross into place. The disciples that have walked with him, talked with him, ate with him, watched these miracles, they're seeing this unfold, and they believe that this is the end. Even though Jesus said that he would conquer death, nothing quite registered, because all they could think about is that their friend was dying. And then he breathed his last breath, and they put him in a tomb and sealed it. Now these friends thought that was it. That was done. Jesus isn't coming back. There's no more kingdom. There's no castles. There's no armies. There's no weapons. These people that killed him, surely they're going to come find us. We need to go hide. We need to figure out a plan to escape. So that's what they did. We end up catching up with them behind locked doors, afraid that the religious leaders are going to come and find them. But what it must have been like to be in proximity of that room when the story unfolded. See, on that evening of the first day of the week, when the disciples were together, the doors were locked for fear of the Jewish leaders. And then Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Now, you're going to have to say peace be with you, because we have to remember the windows and the doors are locked. So he didn't knock and say, "Hey guys, can I come in? Surprise, I'm alive." No, he actually, it's like if you've ever watched the movie Mr. Deeds and the butler, who all of a sudden just shows up and they're like, "Where'd you come from?" He's like, "I am very sneaky, sneaky." Like, this scene unfolds where it is locked, the doors are locked, they are in mourning, they have not probably even really eaten in days or even slept in days. They're exhausted, they've been on the run, they're locked in this home for their lives, and all of a sudden Jesus appears. And all of them, just like Brandon in the spoken word piece, who did a phenomenal job. They thought they were delirious, like they had seen a ghost, and they started looking, do you see that? They thought they were all together hallucinating. And then Jesus has to calm them down. And as they sit down, he showed them his hands and he showed them his side. He said, I don't want you to freak out. This is not a ghost. And he begins eating. I imagine what took place is he is eating there with holes in his wrists and in his side, just eating. And all of them are looking at him like, no way. Like Jesus is for real here. Like we watched him get put in it. We watched him die. How is this even possible? And yet he's here. Disciples were overjoyed that they had seen the Lord. But imagine trying to tell somebody else that story. Like just for a moment, let's put ourselves in the disciples' shoes. They don't think Jesus is coming back, and then Jesus just appears like out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden, they're freaking out, and he's like, peace be with you, which is a nice way of saying chill. Like just calm down. Every time an angel appears, and then in this instance, after Jesus appeared, everyone freaks out. Why? Because you don't expect dead people to rise from the dead. You expect dead people to stay dead. And imagine trying to explain that. Like you unlock the doors because you're overjoyed and you need to go get some more supplies while you stay hunkered down. You start talking. You see one of your friends that had been there in the crowds when he had been teaching. Whenever you go, hey, Jesus is alive. No, he's not. We saw him. We saw the holes. We saw him eat. And they're like, you're crazy. You see, anybody can recall an experience. And they can recall that experience to you, but unless you and I experience it, you'll never understand the full impact of what took place. And I understand this pretty well, and it happened in October of 1999. Had some friends, and we were at college, and they said, hey man, we got some tickets to this concert, and we want to go, and it's going to be great, and we want you to go with us. And I think the only reason they wanted me to go with them was because I was the only one that had a car at school. And so I was being used, but when someone says a free concert, I'm like, I'm in. Like, you can use me. And so it doesn't take much, note to self. And so we're getting in the car, and we're going. And we're like, all right, where is it? They're like, Virginia Beach, that's where you're from. And I'm like, all right, let's go, yay. And so we drive to this concert. Didn't know who the opening act was, but they knew that the person that was headlining, I absolutely loved. And we sit through, we have lawn seats because we're poor college kids right down here at the amphitheater. And so we have lawn seats and we're jamming out and it's awesome. And I mean, it is amazing. Every time I've tried to explain to people that concert, they're like, man, I wish I had been there. I was like, yeah, and you'll never be able to go again because this person has since passed. And we're there and they end it, like everything's done. They exit the stage and everybody's like, encore, encore, one more song, which let's pass all these big artists, like we are stroking an ego. Can we just bypass this? Just stay out here and play all your music. We all know that there's like a chunkier catalog that you haven't played yet. We all know what's going to happen. Stop doing it. And this person in particular had been playing music for a very long time. And so finally, I mean, the whole place is black. It is late. And then all of a sudden you hear this strumming. Bum, 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 bum. She's a good girl. Loves. And it's pitch black. Yeah, some of y'all are humming. You're like, and so we're sitting there, and Skin and Bones, Tom Petty, is on stage, and it is still pitch black, and he's singing through it. And he said, loves horses, and her boyfriend too, and then you get the boom tap, and they are silhouetted, and all the lights come on the crowd, and it is one of those moments where everybody's like, I could go meet Jesus now. Like, this is amazing. And so for some of y'all, you had that moment there. Mine was in 1999 with Tom Petty. And so, like, we're doing a thing. We're singing loud, but he doesn't even get to the chorus yet, and he starts coughing. He cannot stop coughing. And I get it. I mean, he is 400 years old. Like, at that time, you're singing every night at 400 years old. You got to give your voice a rest. And so he, like, pulls off the microphone as it gets ready to get into the first chorus. And the entire audience, it's like they all were struck with the gift of singing. And everyone, as loud as they can, begins belting at it, and we're free. And they sing the whole rest of the song, and he's playing, and the lights come up towards the end of the song on the band, because they've been silhouetted this whole time. All the lights are on us, and it comes up, and his face is just overjoyed. And it's one of those moments that it will go down history, because he has since passed. I will never be able to experience that again. And when I tell people that would have been so awesome to be there, I was like, and it doesn't even do it justice. And you see, the disciples are in this same moment where they are sitting there, they are just in the house, locked doors, Jesus isn't coming back, it's awful. And then all of a sudden, Jesus is like, hey. And they're like, what in the world? Yeah, we thought you were dead. You say, here, check. It's like guys that get together and share battle scars. Like, hey, check out this scar. Like, Jesus immediately is like, hey, look at my hands, look at my side. This is me. This is real. This is not a hallucination. And then they have to go tell their friend who wasn't there. And he has gone down in religious circles and within pop culture, doubting Thomas. And if your name's Thomas, I'm sorry. You see, Thomas wasn't having it. They see Thomas. Imagine this scene. They're like, hey, Thomas, guess what we saw? Jesus is back. And he's like, y'all, what have y'all been doing? Like, y'all, like, in your sadness, did you get into the wrong stuff? Like, are you okay? Did you eat some bad spoiled meat? Are you guys, what is happening with you? Because there is no way that Jesus is like, no. He, like, we were sitting there and we were all, whoo, and then he appeared and we were like, yay. And then he ate and we were all like, whoa. And they're explaining all this happening. And look at the scene that unfolds with Thomas. Now, Thomas, also known as Didymus, he is the original Diddy, by the way, not Puffy, little known fact. One of the 12 was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. Like, they are excited. They unpack everything that's happened. Thomas, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand in his side, it's no way, man. I'm not going to believe it. And I get why we doubt. But doubting the truth doesn't make the truth any less true. And even for some of us this morning that may doubt that this event even took place, that this is real, and it's very few and far between that believe that go, oh, Jesus didn't live and Jesus didn't die. You know, even people outside of the biblical church context believe that his existence was real and that he was put to death in that way. But there are people that go, I just can't believe that he rose from the dead. But here's the deal. Even if you don't believe that, you acknowledge it each and every day. When you look at your phone and you see the date. When you think about the weather as the week goes on. Rick Warren puts it this way. He shares with us that 2,000 years ago in the Middle East, an event occurred that permanently changed the world. Because of that event, history was split. Every time you write a date, you're using the resurrection of Jesus Christ as the focal point. Even if you don't believe this morning, you still, by your very actions in the way that you note culture, do recognize that Jesus is who he said he was. You see, at the end of the day, what we realize is that Jesus is the one we've been waiting for. And he lights up our darkness, but I still get why people don't believe in his conquering death, because we all have moments of doubt. My daughter proved this, our youngest. I was dropping our older girls off at school. They are 10 and 8 respectively, and then we have a 4-year-old. And so I dropped the other ones off at the bus stop, and we're driving back to the house. And she's in the back seat, and she's la, 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 because anytime we're in the car, it's like Disney show tunes. If you have daughters, it is a constant like sing-along musical until they one day leave, and then they come back, and they still do musical, yay. And so that's my life, pray for me. And so we're driving back, and it's something, dancing candlesticks, I don't know. And we're singing, and then as we're pulling in the driveway, I hear this, bam! And I'm like, I don't live in a neighborhood where that would be normal, but I do know what a gun sounds like, and that sounded like a gun. And so as I'm pulling in the driveway, I'm like ducking, and my daughter's like, Daddy, what? I'm like, get down. And so we get down, and I'm looking immediately. I'm like, what's on my keys? I'm like, all I have is a bottle opener. I'm like, that ain't gonna do any good. Take that, but I'm looking for it, and I look in the direction that the noise came from. And as I look, there are feathers flying everywhere. And I'm like, well, I don't think anyone's hunting in my neighborhood. Don't think people are wandering around Kempsville going, that's a nice bird, And so I get out, Daddy, can we get out? I was like, yeah, let's get out and check this out. And we walk to the bottom of the power pole, and there is a bird, a blackbird that is real dead. Like, not like freshly dead and like flop. No, it is if you, I don't know if you know where birds and animals go, whatever, but it has gone to be with the Lord. And it is done. It is so dead. And my daughter Kinley's like, Daddy, what happened? I look up, and there's this big transformer at the top of the pole. And I don't know if you're a lineman this morning that does that stuff. I salute you. I don't know all the terminology, so I'm going to butcher it. But there's a thing up there that I just know, electricity bad, don't touch. And so somehow that bird got around it, and it got zapped. Feathers everywhere, it's dead at the bottom. And Kinley and my daughter's like, Daddy, are we gonna pick that up? I was like, no, that bird's gonna stay in here. A kitty cat's gotta get hungry. And so we walk in, and my father-in-law lives with us, and she's like, Papa, bird got dead. Bird got dead, it got zapped. Ah! And she's telling him the story, and he's like, what? And then she runs upstairs, Mommy, bird got dead. And I'm like, that's decent English. All right, we'll work with that. Bird got dead. And so my wife's like, what? She said, bird got dead, zap, bang, whatever. And my wife's like, nah. She does not believe a word this girl is saying. For context, this is the same girl who not too long ago when we were at the zoo goes, can't wait to go to the zoo and see some unicorns. So, zoo and unicorns, bird got dead. I don't believe you on either instance. That would be general logic from an adult. Totally get it. She comes downstairs and said, Kinley said bird got dead, bird got dead. I was like, oh yeah, it's fried out there. And feathers everywhere. She's like, no. I was like, no, you want to go see it? We walk her out there, look at it. She goes, ooh. I was like, yeah, ooh. She said, you gonna get that? I said, no. That is not in my yard. It is on the street. We're gonna let the circle of life take its course. And she did not, and I get why she didn't believe. She didn't believe because someone told her, and she's like, I don't know about your credibility. I'm not quite sure, and you doubt. And even my wife is a faithful person. You tell her X, Y, and Z, she is going to believe, but I understood why. And so if you have wrestled with doubt, if you even wrestle with the resurrection of Jesus and conquering death and all these things, I get it. I understand it. Even the most faithful people doubt. You are not alone. But I want to remind you and encourage you that Jesus can turn your doubt into devotion. That no matter where you find yourself this morning, and I don't even care about the hot button topics that fly across the pundits' pages in news cycles and all these things, I could not care less. Because it all lands squarely on Jesus' life, death, and conquering death so that you and I could experience life and life to the full. And we get to Thomas in that doubt and that wavering. And a week later, they're sitting in the same spot. They're in the house again. So we get back to the house with these guys. And Thomas was with them this time. Though, here's the deal. Still afraid, still thinking the religious leaders are going to kill him. All these feasts are taking place. Doors are locked. And Jesus came and stood among them and said, and peace be with you. And I bet all the other disciples were like, oh, yeah. And Thomas was like, what in the world? Like freaking out and doing all this stuff. And can you imagine being the rest of the guys where they're just like that gif with the popcorn in the comments section? Like, I'm just going to sit back and watch this. Mister, I need to see his hands inside. You know, they're all looking at him, ready to see this take place, watching it unfold. And so now they're all like, yeah. You didn't believe us the other day, did you? Now what? And Jesus could have come in there and yelled at Thomas. He would have had every right. Thomas, these guys told you they saw me. How come you didn't believe them? Thomas, don't you know better? I told you all throughout this to stay faithful, to trust me, and all these things. Nope. Jesus does the very same thing he did with the others. No shaming, no yelling, no trying to prove a point. He knows that Thomas is struggling. And he said, why don't you put your finger here and see my hands? If you want, Thomas, they're friends. Why don't you reach over and touch my side? It's there, that same spot where they put that spear in my side. That cut's there too. But Jesus, while loving and kind, also gets right to the point. He says, listen, I love you. Stop doubting and believe. You're seeing it here firsthand. Stop doubting and believe. And I love the response that takes place. Then Jesus told him, after he says, my Lord and my God. He doesn't justify what happened. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't try to tell Jesus, well, you don't understand. Like, they told me that you were alive. Like, really? You know, my Lord and my God. He said, because you have seen me and believed, blessed are those who have not seen me and yet believed. He notes that for us. Now, you may be here this morning and wrestling with all kinds of things, but that's the biggest hurdle. What about Jesus? Like, this is unbelievable. I can't believe. What if all these guys lied? Could this really have happened? Like, maybe they got together and orchestrated this thing. And, well, I would tell you that the reason that I know that this didn't take place was because of this guy. Some of you are old enough to know what took place with our friend Nixon here. You see, in June of 1972, there was a break-in at the Watergate Hotel where people who were assigned and under him were breaking into wiretap and to steal confidential documentation to be able to help Nixon in his quest. And he did everything in his power as president during that time to cover it up to the best of his ability. But it didn't take long for things to go south. 2 years later, it took 2 whole years. The country was in upheaval. It was revealed that he was a part of it. They had buckled. He ended up resigning. Our country was in an absolute mess. But I love the way that Charles Colson puts this, because it didn't take 2 years for those 12 guys to buckle. Listen to this. I know the resurrection is a fact, and Watergate proved it to me. How? Because 12 men testified they had seen Jesus raised from the dead. Then they proclaimed that truth for 40 years, never once denying it. Everyone was beaten, tortured, stoned, not like you're thinking, and put into prison. They would not have endured that if it weren't true. Watergate embroiled 12 of the most powerful men in the world, and they couldn't keep alive for 3 weeks. 3 whole weeks. That these men in power couldn't all just come together and go, here's our story, and stick to it. Not even 3 weeks went by, and they're all like, actually, it was him, and pointing fingers and doing whatever and blabbing and saying everything in the world. You're telling me that 12 average, everyday men, farmers, fishermen, tax collectors, that these guys could keep alive for 40 years, even in the face of being beaten, jailed, and many of them being put to death. Absolutely impossible. Wouldn't happen. Would not happen. You may look at me and say, Jason, I just don't get it. I'm just trying to live a good life, but I can't hitch my ideas and my belief to that wagon. And I would share with you this, that, well, if the Jesus story isn't true, then I have still lived an honorable life. But if it is true, which I believe that it is, it changes absolutely everything for you and I. Because no one can enter into life after this without a relationship, saving grace, moving, living, accepting, and embracing what Jesus has given each and every one of us. We either end up in eternity separated from God or eternity with him. C.S. Lewis puts it this way: He says, I believe in Christianity. I believe that the sun is risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. You see, if you don't hear anything else, I want you to know that Jesus is the one that you've been waiting for. He is the light that shines all of your darkness, all of your hurt, pain, shame, regret, anger, just frustration in life, the moments where you don't want to forgive, all of those pieces, he illuminates to show you what's true, that you are valued, that you are loved, and that he sent Jesus to wipe your ledger clean, because every single one of us has blemishes on our past, our present, and we will into our future, and Jesus wipes it all clean so that we can have life and life to the full. But the only thing left for you and I is how will we respond?
When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour content on all my pride. Were the whole realm of nature mine, that were an offering far too small. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all.
Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab, as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in, and we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.